What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers, the overtime is mandatory. Fantastic. You should know that if you choose me for this position, I will be declining the optional overtime. I mean, if you're going to walk anyway, it might be funny to call their bluff. My wife actually did this on her interview about working on some Saturdays. She politely refused on grounds of traveling time, but obliged to chip in from home if a client needed something urgently. She got the job. Was interviewed by a senior programmer and the department head. The department head was continuously making condescending remarks towards the other interviewer. Poor guy just sounded broken. Hope he's somewhere else now. On a second interview, the general manager brought me into the conference room with his 8 managers present. At first I thought it was a meet and greet, but no. They grilled me for an hour and a half. Didn't appreciate that, along with a couple other things, and politely withdrew from being considered. Couple months later, in playing in a ball tournament and come across one of the managers. I mentioned how weird that interview was. He says, "Weird for you? Ha. I found out then and there you were being interviewed for my job." Yep. Dodged a bullet there. I was once part of a group onboarding for a net job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract and everyone, except me, signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy attached, without other pages. There was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the hour drone said, "Okay, I guess me is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you're struggling so much." After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. He informed me that hours reported I had walked out after refusing to be drug tested. I was asked to sign a contract that gave the employer full access to my medical records. It was supposedly for drug testing, but worded badly. I signed every other page and got the job. Would been very interesting if they felt like drug testing me and they weren't able to. When they ask out of nowhere, "What clients can you bring with you?" I interviewed with MetLife Insurance about 20 years ago. They demanded that I provide them with a contact list of no fewer than 100 friends and family. Noped out of that quickly. Sure, it wasn't an interview with an MLM. A lot of the supplemental insurances in the US are set up like MLMs. I know Aflac is the same way. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything, and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me, and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. Since when is it legal to have employees working and not paying them? What a psycho. Last job I worked. Yay. Everyone here is new. But it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back. So being your own lunch, you'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Eater also was told by my trainer, "You want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job." This was like my second weekend. "They're afraid you'll never come back" is so funny to me. My favorite is their salad of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. Huge red flag. After my last job, I have learned to take the attitude that in interviewing the job too. I used to think, well, I need a job, and let myself think it was sweet that I was being given the chance. But I have a great work ethic, so I always become the man. Supervisors seem to love that term. Well, I've learned that when they say that, they mean they are going to heap a lot more work and responsibility on you than your coworkers. So now I go into interviews with the attitude that I can always find another job. So I judge the company now. This actually happened to me. Interviewer, do you have any questions for us? Me, what is a challenge this department has recently faced? Interviewer, job security. Mayo gotta give them props for honesty at that point. He should have just gotten up and opened the door and gestured out. Dude probably about to quit and was like, better save this guy before I dip. A true homie. I interviewed at a place. As part of my working interview I was with two of the people I would be working closely with. Both said they loved the company and would be staying on long term. There were no cameras. Boss wasn't listening nearby, so no reason to lie. They were both gone within 6 months. I'm still bitter about it. When you are signing all the forms they give you, and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that just sign here and so on. I hate that in any situation, not just jobs. Buying something big like a car and they're like, oh, it's just standard contract stuff. Let me decide if it's standard. You know full well, if I sign this, I've agreed to whatever the duck is written. Company, standard contract stuff. Don't need to read it, just sign. Also company, when in court, you should have read the contract to know what you were signing. I didn't know it at the time, but you'll be wearing many hats was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. That's a non-profit motto, if I ever heard one. It's also a tech startup motto, and a hat modeling agency motto. Jobs where the expectations of the position aren't clear. The person hiring you should be able to give a clear idea of your responsibilities day to day in a practical way. It shows that the company understands what it wants out of the position. I've worked a couple positions that had a really hard time figuring out who was supposed to do what. That lead to a lot of confusion, and both of them had this in the interviews. If the company you're working for can't define what success in that position looks like, you won't be able to either. I was interviewed for a job like this. When I walked into the interview, it was made clear that the job was being offered and was mine if I wanted it. On my credentials alone, it was a library supervisor job at a rare items and fine arts library. An hour into the interview, despite asking several times, they couldn't tell me what I would be doing. Slowly, it came out that there were frequent fights in the library I would need to break up. Student mental breakdowns I would somehow have to handle as a mental health professional. The kicker was that the library held a lot of fine art, and I would need to stop people from, literally, stealing the Warhols. They wanted a librarian who I guess was somehow Batman. I got an email that the position was dissolved 6 months later. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, oh, she's not here today, in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable MW, but could come in anytime THF. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews and ending up working elsewhere. You'd think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager badmouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. Hello. I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was cancelled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow. I would be livid. Definitely shows a complete disregard for your time. You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company. Apostrophe. This is illegal in most US states. Unknown about outside the US. Wait, really? This happened to me in Ohio. They also said I had to give it back. I didn't, lol. Edit. Guys, stop making Ohio look so bad. Mayo. They wanted you to purchase it and give it to them once you left. That's absurd. That's funny because that's actually happened to me recently. I laughed and told them to go duck themselves, lol. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. I feel like that would put a lot of pressure on the employee to not say anything to dissuade an applicant and upset management. When you ask, "What do you like about working here?" and the interviewer talks about the location of the job, "It's a great place to live," instead of the actual job. I asked this at one of my first interviews right out of school. My interviewer went, "That's a good question," and was ruminating for a good 2 minutes. She went with, "We get pretty good parking spots," and quickly followed with, "And the people are nice." People are nice is actually a good one. Sometimes can be the only real reason that the work doesn't outright suck. If they seem to relieved that someone actually showed up for the interview. I just had an interview last week where they showed up 30 minutes late because they weren't expecting me to show up after the first 3 hires never came to work. Tried to hire me on spot and wanted me to work a different department than what I applied for. "We only want the best of the best." Me, "How much are you paying?" Minimum wage. Salary, $COMPETITIVE. Reality, minimum wage. Salary, competitive. Reality, competitive to sweatshops. They are competitive, alright. But the competition is who can pay you the least. Everyone looks tired. Also, you don't see anyone in your department before working in it other than the boss. Made this mistake a few times. Was the worst jobs. Employees are either new hires or have been there for 15+ years with no in between. There is no room for improvement. It's better to leave for advancement. There are 1 or 2 exceptions to this. I've been at companies where you have the 20+ year veterans who love what they do and refuse to move up. So you have a young crowd before they move up and an old grizzled veteran crowd. I brought up a company's awful Glassdoor reviews and they got so mad they ended the interview. Well, guess I dodged that bullet. I've done this a few times during interviews. I've gotten the same responses and it has never been addressed professionally. Even when companies have stellar reviews, I like to ask about their online reviews. It shows me their reactions to stressful situations. I also figure they're looking at everyone's LinkedIn or whatever. So if they judge me by my online presence, I don't see why I can't do that to them. I'm not obligated to work for someone simply because they extended an interview. When they feel the need to reassure you in the interview that at that company, they work hard, but also play hard. They don't play hard. It's a sweet shop and they're just trying to convince that it's anything but one. 100%. Work hard, play hard translates to a minimum of 50 hours a week. But you can use our games room because we totally have one. Play hard means an annual team lunch and a cringe shit Christmas party. We don't like clockwatchers here. We expect everyone to be committed. Expecting more work for no extra pay. Getting mad at you when you leave at 5, even though your stated work hours end at 5. Well, then you won't mind if I come in at 9:30. You're not watching the clock. After all, they don't like it when you watch the clocks. Their clockwatching is only natural, of course. Always ask the interviewer about the last person who worked the position you are interviewing for, how long they worked, and why they left. Their answers can be very telling of the work environment. Absolutely, it feels wrong initially to pry, but you have every right to know the circumstances you're walking into, within reason. If they volunteer that information, that's a good sign. You'll get full-time hours, but won't be full-time. We'll do everything in our power to avoid giving you benefits, even though we have you working more than 40 hours in a week. I once worked in a grocery store, under a union, hired for part-time. Consistently, was scheduled 40 hours/week until the 3rd week of the month. Then I worked 39 hours that week. It kept them from giving me benefits. We work hard, and we play hard. Translation, you will work 60+ hours a week. You will be expected to work late nights and early mornings. People will treat this job like their whole life. Well, also underpay you. It may look like a decent salary, but when you back it out to hourly it's not even remotely competitive with industry standard. But we have kegs and a ping pong table. Also, if everyone that interviews you has been there less than 2 years, it's a sign that they can't retain good employees. Thursday night half price appetizers at Applebee's with cowhawkers is your social life. When they tell you what I'm paying you stays between you and me. Don't discuss pay with anyone else usually means they are trying to pay you less than your cowhawkers who do the same job and don't want you to know. This happened to my husband. He had been with company for about 2 years and they hired another employee. Told my husband he got a raise and wasn't to tell anyone else. Turns out his raise was equal to new hire pay. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position, and they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back. It reduces productivity. Big nope for me. I didn't even do that with my high school students because it felt like an infringement on their rights. Funny that it was an insurance company considering it reeks of liability. Missed emergency calls, privacy issues, potential for theft, etc. Close bracket. Hey PSSST. Please subscribe and like.